Heartless Millionaire hired a virgin as his wife, but he never imagined she'd do what no one else could. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us get back to our main character. Rain fell in sharp diagonal lines against the tinted window of the limousine, the kind of rain that made New York look like a city behind glass. Inside, silence filled the air, thick, heavy, expensive. Adrian Holt sat with his back straight, fingers resting on a leather folder. His cufflinks gleamed under the dim overhead light. Across from him, Clara Reyes gripped the strap of her worn purse, her knuckles white, her second-hand dress damp from the downpour. "Marry me," Adrian said, voice calm, almost mechanical. "Think of it as a contract." Her breath caught. "I am sorry." "What?" I said, "Marry me," he repeated, sliding the folder across the seat. 6 months. No intimacy, no emotional involvement. You will be compensated, and your financial issues, whatever they are, will disappear. She blinked, half certain she had misheard him. Her pulse pounded so loud she could hear it echo through the car. "You are asking me to sell myself?" Adrian's gaze did not flinch. "I am offering a solution. You need money. I need a wife. Simple economics." Something about the way he said it, simple economics, made her stomach twist. Outside, thunder cracked through the night. Clara wanted to leave, to slam the car door and run back into the storm, but the folder sat between them like a silent judge. Printed across the top, "Marriage Agreement Confidential." She whispered, "Why me?" Adrian's jaw tightened. "Because you do not love me. That makes you perfect." For a moment, she just stared at him. This man who looked more like a sculpture than a human being. "And what happens after 6 months?" He leaned back. "We both walk away. You will be debt-free, and I will be free from my family's obsession with heirs and appearances. Everyone wins." Lightning flashed across his face, highlighting the faint scar that cut through his jawline. He looked like someone who had once cared deeply, and then decided never to care again. "I cannot do that," Clara said softly. Adrian picked up a fountain pen and twirled it between his fingers. "Then tell me, Miss Reyes, when your landlord throws you out next week, when the hospital stops treating your mother because you cannot pay, will pride still keep you warm?" Her eyes widened. "How do you know about that?" He smiled, thin and cold. "I make it my job to know everything about people I do business with." For the first time, anger replaced fear in her voice. "Marriage is not business, Mr. Holt." "Everything is business," he said. "Even love. People just hate admitting it." The words hung in the air, heavier than the thunder outside. She stared down at the contract. The zeros written next to her name blurred through the tears she refused to let fall. She thought of the hospital room, the unpaid bills, her mother's pale hands gripping hers. She looked up at him one last time. "You are heartless." Adrian's expression did not change. "Good. That is what makes this work." He slid a small velvet box across the seat. Inside was a platinum ring, simple, flawless, soulless. Clara closed her eyes. Somewhere deep down, something in her whispered no. But the louder voice, the desperate one, whispered just for 6 months. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady but hollow. "Fine, I will sign it." Adrian's lips curved into a faint smile, not victory, not joy, just confirmation. "Welcome to the arrangement, Mrs. Holt." The car pulled away from the curb, tires slicing through puddles. Outside, the city blurred into streaks of gold and gray, while inside, 2 strangers sat in silence, bound by paper, pride, and a deal that neither of them fully understood. And somewhere in that silence, one question lingered. Who would break first? Rain still fell when Clara stepped out of the limousine that night, the city lights reflected in the puddles around her feet. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the folder against her chest, the ink of her name still wet on the signature line. The moment the door slammed shut behind her, she felt the silence of the street close in like fog. Somewhere above, thunder rolled again, and for a second, she wished it would wash the entire evening away. By the time she reached her small apartment, her shoes were soaked, and her dress clung to her skin. The air inside smelled faintly of detergent and old wallpaper. Her mother's breathing machine hummed softly from the next room. Clara knelt beside the bed and touched her mother's thin hand. "Mom," she whispered, "I got the money. We are going to be all right." Quote. Her mother's eyelids fluttered, but she was too weak to answer. Clara forced a smile, even though her stomach churned. The folder sat on the counter, its pages like a secret too heavy to touch. Across town, inside a penthouse high above Manhattan, Adrian Holt stood before a wall of glass that overlooked the city. The storm painted streaks of silver across the skyline. His assistant, a woman in her 40s with precise eyes and a sharper tongue, waited quietly behind him. "She signed?" Adrian nodded once. "It is done. Prepare the paperwork and schedule a fitting. The wedding will be private." The assistant hesitated. "You are really going through with this? A contract marriage?" "The press will." "I do not care about the press," Adrian interrupted, turning from the window. "I care about control. That is all that matters." Gufter. But when she left the room, his reflection lingered in the glass, and for the first time that night, he looked like a man uncertain of the ground beneath him. 2 days later, Clara arrived at the courthouse, wearing a borrowed white dress that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume. The ceremony was quiet, sterile. A notary, Adrian's lawyer, and 2 signatures. No flowers, no vows, no smiles. "Do you, Adrian Holt, take Clara Reyes to be your lawful wife?" "I do," he said flatly. Clara hesitated when it was her turn. Her voice came out barely above a whisper. "I do." The sound of the pen scratching across the paper felt louder than the thunder outside. When the notary declared them married, Adrian slid the ring onto her finger with mechanical precision. "Congratulations," he said. "Do people usually say that after selling themselves?" She replied quietly. He said nothing, just turned to the door. "Your belongings will be moved to my estate tonight. My driver will pick you up at 8. That evening, as she packed her few clothes into an old suitcase, her roommate Jenny leaned against the doorway, eyes wide. "Clara, what did you do? You disappeared for 2 days, and now you are married?" Clara zipped the suitcase and avoided her gaze. "It is not what it looks like." Jenny folded her arms. "Then what is it?" "A way out," Clara said softly. "Or maybe a way down. I am not sure yet." Quote. When the black car came to take her, Jenny stood on the sidewalk watching. "Be careful," she called after her. Inside the car, Clara stared at her reflection in the window. The city passed by in streaks of gold and gray, a blur of lives that had nothing to do with hers. The driver did not speak, and she did not ask where they were going. At the gates of the Holt estate, iron bars rose against the night sky like a fortress. The mansion beyond was a stretch of glass and stone, every light calculated, every corner immaculate. Adrian was waiting at the entrance, hands in his pockets. He looked at her the way a collector looks at a painting he just purchased, appreciative, distant, and utterly detached. "Welcome home," he said simply. Clara's throat tightened. The words home and contract did not belong in the same sentence, yet here she was, standing in both at once. She stepped past him into the grand hallway. Marble floors gleamed beneath her feet, and the chandelier above scattered light across the room like shards of crystal. Everything smelled faintly of wealth and loneliness. Adrian's voice echoed behind her. "Your room is down the hall on the right. We will discuss the rules in the morning." She turned slightly, her hand brushing the ring on her finger. "And if I break one?" He paused before answering. "Then the contract ends, and so does your safety." The door closed softly behind her. In the vast quiet of that mansion, Clara realized what she had truly signed for, not just money, not just survival, but a life where every word, every breath, and every heartbeat had a price. Morning light spilled through the tall windows of the Holt estate, brushing gold against the marble floor. Clara stood at the edge of the massive dining room table, feeling small beneath the chandelier that looked more expensive than everything she had ever owned. The housekeeper, a woman named Mrs. Alden, placed a silver tray in front of her and said in a tone that was polite but cold, "Mr. Holt will join you shortly. He prefers punctuality." Clara nodded, still trying to understand how she had gone from a cramped apartment to a mansion that looked like a museum. Every sound echoed here. Even her heartbeat felt too loud. She sat down carefully, afraid to disturb anything. The breakfast was arranged like art-fresh fruit carved into shapes, eggs gleaming with butter, and a single cup of coffee placed at perfect alignment with the silverware. When Adrian finally entered, the room shifted. He wore a gray suit, no tie, his presence filling the space before he spoke. "You are early," he said. "You said you liked punctuality," she replied quietly. He sat at the other end of the table. Between them stretched a gulf of polished wood and silence. "I appreciate when people listen," he said. "It saves time." Mrs. Alden poured his coffee, then disappeared through the kitchen door. For a long moment the only sound was the clink of his spoon against the cup. Finally, Adrian opened a folder he had brought with him. "This," he said, sliding it toward her, "is the official list of our terms. You will read them carefully and sign the acknowledgement page." Clara hesitated before reaching for the papers. The first page read Behavioral and Public Conduct Guidelines. She skimmed the lines, her pulse quickening. Rule 1. Maintain a respectful distance in public and private. Rule 2. No questions about personal history, especially regarding family. Rule 3. You will accompany me to 5 official events over the next 6 months. Rule 4. No physical contact unless explicitly required for appearances. Rule 5. All media inquiries must be directed to my office. Rule 6. Confidentiality extends beyond the contract's duration. She looked up, frowning. "You make it sound like a job description, not a marriage." "It is both," he answered. "And it is temporary." She pressed her lips together. "And what if I break one of these rules?" He looked straight at her, his eyes unreadable. "Then the contract is void. The payments stop, and you walk out of this house the same way you walked in with nothing." Clara swallowed hard, forcing herself to stay calm. "You really have thought of everything." "I have learned to," Adrian said, setting down his cup. "People tend to show their true selves when money is involved. I prefer to set boundaries before they do." She folded her arms. "You talk like someone who has been betrayed." He gave a short laugh, quiet, humorless. "Everyone has. The difference is whether you learn from it or repeat it." The silence stretched again, this time heavier. Clara signed the acknowledgement page, her signature shaking slightly. "Good," Adrian said. "Your first event is next Saturday. It is a corporate dinner. My assistant will brief you on etiquette, dress, and conversation topics. You will represent my name, not yourself. Do you understand?" "Yes," she said. He stood, adjusting his cufflinks. "You can spend the day familiarizing yourself with the property. The staff has been informed not to engage unless necessary. Privacy is important here." Quote. As he turned to leave, she could not stop herself from asking, "Do you ever get tired of living like this?" He paused at the door. "Like what?" "Like a man who does not trust anyone." His shoulders stiffened. "Trust is the most expensive currency, Mrs. Holt. I do not trade in it." When he was gone, Clara sat alone, staring at the list of rules. The ink shimmered under the morning light, every line another chain disguised as professionalism. She thought of her mother, of the hospital bills, and of how many zeros were printed at the bottom of the agreement. For now, she would play along. But inside her, a quiet fire had started, the kind that waits, patient and determined, for the right moment to burn. And as you listen to this part, imagine being in her place. If someone offered you a deal that could save your family but cost you your pride, would you sign it? The first week at the Holt estate felt less like marriage and more like an unending audition. Every morning began the same way: a knock on the door, a tray of breakfast too beautiful to eat, and a reminder that someone was always watching. Clara was not used to silence this heavy or rooms this large. She moved through the hallways like a visitor in someone else's life. On the third day, a team of professionals arrived: a stylist, a public relations consultant, and a woman named Evelyn who called herself an image architect. They studied Clara like a project that needed rebuilding. Evelyn handed her a list. "These are your fittings, posture sessions, and etiquette lessons. Mr. Holt requires precision." Clara forced a polite smile. "Does he require happiness too, or is that optional?" Evelyn blinked, unsure how to respond. "Just follow the schedule, Mrs. Holt." By noon, Clara was sitting in front of a mirror while the stylist fussed over her hair. He pinned and unpinned curls, sighed dramatically, and said, "We are not creating beauty, darling. We are creating credibility." Later, as she practiced her walk across the marble floor in high heels, the sound echoed down the hall. Adrian appeared at the doorway, silent as a shadow. She froze mid-step. He watched for a moment before speaking. "You are trying too hard." Quote, "Maybe because everyone here expects me to fail," she said, lowering her gaze. "People only fail when they stop listening," he replied. "Walk again." She obeyed, though her hands trembled slightly. When she turned, the heel of her shoe caught the edge of a rug, and a cup of espresso spilled from the table nearby, splattering across the white marble. Her heart jumped. The room went still. Adrian walked toward her, slow and deliberate. For a moment she thought he would yell. Instead, he said quietly, "In this house, people do not make mistakes. They get replaced." Something in her broke. "Then replace me," she said, her voice shaking. "Find someone who will nod and smile and never spill a drop, but she will never look you in the eye the way I am right now." He stopped. The air between them tightened. For the first time, his expression shifted, the perfect mask cracking just enough to show confusion or maybe admiration. "You think defiance impresses me?" "No," she said. "But pretending does not suit me either." He left without another word, but later that evening, a new rule appeared on her schedule. No rehearsals tomorrow. Rest day approved. The following afternoon, she wandered into the library, drawn by the faint sound of music. Adrian was at the piano, playing a melody so gentle it felt almost accidental. She stood quietly at the doorway until he noticed. "I did not know you played," she said. He shrugged. "I stopped a long time ago." "It sounds like you miss it." He gave a dry laugh. "You cannot miss what you bury." The conversation hung there, fragile but real. When she turned to leave, he said softly, "You have potential, Clara. Do not waste it proving me wrong." That night she tried on one of the gowns Evelyn had left behind. Satin ivory, simple but elegant. When she stepped in front of the mirror, she barely recognized herself. For a fleeting moment, she imagined walking beside Adrian, not as his contract wife, but as his equal. The door opened without warning. Adrian froze in the doorway, his phone still in his hand. The look in his eyes changed, something unspoken flickered there, brief as lightning. "The dress suits you," he said. "Thank you," she replied, her voice softer than she intended. He cleared his throat. "The first event is tomorrow. Remember your role. Smile when necessary, speak only when spoken to, and do not forget why you are here." When he left, Clara let out a breath she did not know she was holding. She looked at herself once more in the mirror and whispered, "I remember exactly why I am here, and one day so will you." The reflection staring back was no longer just the girl who signed a desperate deal. It was a woman learning how to stand in a world built to make her kneel. The following evening, the city glittered beneath 1,000 lights as Clara stepped out of the black car. Her heels clicked against the marble driveway of the Sterling Grand Hotel, where Holt Enterprises was hosting its annual gala. Flashing cameras lit up the entrance like lightning, and every whisper seemed to follow her name. She clutched her small silver clutch, her pulse unsteady. The gown Evelyn had chosen shimmered under the lights, elegant yet modest. Adrian exited the car first, his dark suit flawless, his posture unyielding. He extended his arm toward her, not out of affection but obligation. "Remember," he said quietly, "tonight you are Mrs. Holt. Speak less, smile more." She placed her hand on his arm, her fingers trembling slightly. "Understood, Mr. Holt." Inside, the ballroom pulsed with low music and laughter. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across the room, and waiters glided like ghosts through the crowd. Adrian's world was one of precision, where every greeting was a transaction and every smile a strategy. Clara followed his lead, mirroring his calm, though her chest felt tight with unease. People turned to look. Some admired, others judged. She could feel the weight of their gazes pressing against her skin. A woman with diamond earrings leaned close to her companion and whispered something, both of them laughing quietly. Adrian's business partner, Mr. Lawson, approached with a champagne glass in hand. "Adrian," he said with a grin, "you did not mention your wife was such a charming surprise. Quite the fairy tale ending for New York's most unattainable man." Adrian's lips curved faintly. "Fairy tales sell well to investors," he replied. Lawson chuckled, then turned to Clara. "And tell me, Mrs. Holt, what enchanted you the most about our dear Adrian? His fortune, his temper, or his inability to smile?" A few people nearby snickered. Adrian remained silent, his jaw tightening. Clara met Lawson's gaze and said evenly, "Actually, it was his honesty. At least with him, I always know when I am not wanted." The laughter around them died instantly. Lawson blinked, embarrassed. Adrian's expression shifted, still stern, but something like respect flickered beneath the surface. As the night went on, she held her ground beside him. Every camera captured her poised smile. Every whisper that once mocked began to fade. For the first time, she felt the power of presence, the quiet strength of being underestimated. During a lull in conversation, Adrian leaned close enough for only her to hear. "You handled that well." "I learned from the best," she said, glancing up at him. His eyes softened, just for a second. "You should eat. You are shaking." "I am fine," she said, "just not used to pretending." He exhaled quietly, a ghost of a laugh. "Welcome to my world. Come." Later, as the music swelled, a reporter approached them with a microphone. "Mr. Holt, one quick question for our viewers. Is this marriage love at first sight, or a merger of ambition?" Clara could feel Adrian tense beside her. Every flashbulb turned toward them. She smiled, her voice steady. "If I had to choose, I would say neither. It is about truth. Real love cannot be arranged, but honesty can build anything." The room went silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. Even the reporter smiled, lowering her mic. Adrian looked at Clara as if seeing her for the first time. "You saved us from tomorrow's headlines," he murmured. "No," she said softly. "I just told the truth." They stayed until the final toast. When the crowd began to disperse, Adrian offered his hand. "You surprised me tonight." Clara hesitated, then placed her hand in his. "You will get used to it." Outside, the rain had returned, gentle and steady. As they walked to the car, she felt him relax beside her, his pace slowing to match hers. The tension that had once defined their silence now felt different, warmer, unfamiliar, fragile. When they reached the car, he opened the door for her without a word. But before she stepped in, he said quietly, "You were remarkable tonight, Clara." She turned, meeting his gaze. "Be careful, Adrian. If you start saying things like that, people might think you actually have a heart." Quote. For the first time, he smiled, not the polite curve he gave the world, but something genuine, small, and real. "Maybe I am starting to," he said. As the car pulled away, the city lights reflected off the window like distant stars. For the first time since she signed the contract, Clara did not feel like a prisoner. She felt like a player in the same game, one who had just learned how to win. The night after the gala, the Holt mansion felt quieter than ever. The chandeliers were dimmed, the staff had retired, and the sound of rain pressed gently against the windows. Clara stood barefoot in the hallway, still in her gown, holding a glass of water she had forgotten to drink. Every step she took echoed softly through the marble corridor. She stopped outside the library. Faint music drifted through the door, slow, haunting, almost mournful. She pushed it open slightly and saw Adrian sitting at the piano, his head bowed, his fingers tracing notes like secrets. The melody was something she had never heard before, and yet it sounded like loneliness given shape. She leaned against the doorframe. "You play beautifully," she said quietly. Adrian did not turn. "It is late. You should rest." "I could say the same to you," she replied. "What keeps you awake, Mr. Holt, the numbers or the ghosts?" He finally looked up, his eyes catching the low light. "Both." She walked closer, her bare feet silent on the marble floor. "I did not know billionaires had ghosts." "They are the only kind worth fearing," he said softly. "The ones that live in your own memory." She sat down on the couch near the piano, wrapping her arms around her knees. "You sound like a man who lost something." Adrian stared at the keys, his jaw tightening. "Someone, once." Quote. Clara waited. He spoke again after a long pause. "Her name was Lydia. We were engaged 5 years ago. She said she loved me, but what she loved was the empire I was building. When I refused to fund her family's company, she left. 2 months later, she sold everything she knew about my business to my rivals." "I am sorry," Clara said softly. He gave a humorless smile. "Do not be. It taught me what love costs. I have been collecting receipts ever since." For a while, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the slow rhythm of the rain and the distant hum of the city below. Then Clara said, "Maybe love is not a transaction, Adrian. Maybe you were just with the wrong accountant." He glanced at her, surprised. The smallest flicker of laughter escaped him, quick and uncertain. "You have a sharp tongue for someone who signed a contract to stay silent." "I signed to survive," she said, "not to disappear." The words lingered in the air, heavier than either of them expected. Adrian stood and walked to the window. "I do not know what to do with someone like you, Clara." "Then stop trying to manage me like one of your investments." He turned toward her. The distance between them felt charged, alive. "You think you can just walk into my world and change the rules?" "No," she said calmly, "but I can refuse to play by the wrong ones." He studied her for a long moment. The rainlight from the window brushed against his face, softening the edges that money and power had carved too sharply. "Do you hate me?" he asked suddenly. Clara shook her head. "No, I think I pity you." He flinched slightly, then looked away. "Pity is worse than hate. Not when it comes from someone who actually sees you," she said quietly. For the first time, he had no reply. She stood, setting her glass on the piano, and walked toward the door. Before leaving, she turned back. "You are not heartless, Adrian. You are just terrified of proving yourself wrong." When she was gone, he sat alone in the dim room. His fingers brushed over the piano keys again, but the melody had changed. It was softer now, uncertain, searching. Upstairs, Clara lay awake, staring at the ceiling. Somewhere beneath the ache of exhaustion, a strange thought formed. Maybe the man she had been paid to marry was starting to feel again. And as you listen to this part, think about this question. Have you ever met someone who made you question everything you believed about love? 2 weeks later, the world that had briefly felt softer turned sharp again. It began with whispers, rumors slipping through the walls of Holt Enterprises like smoke. At first, Adrian ignored them. But by the third morning, when his assistant stormed into his office with a trembling phone, everything changed. "Sir, it is all over the internet," she said, her voice shaking. "Someone leaked the marriage contract." Adrian froze. "What did you say?" She handed him the phone. Headlines filled the screen. "Heartless CEO marries poor waitress for publicity deal." Underneath was a photo from the gala, Clara smiling beside him, the caption cruelly framing her as a gold digger. For a moment he could not breathe. Who leaked it? "We do not know yet, but the investors are calling. The board is furious. Go." By noon, his name trended across every platform, his company stock dipping by millions. Adrian canceled all meetings, slammed the office door shut, and stared out at the city skyline that suddenly felt like an enemy. At 6 o'clock, he returned home. The mansion was dark except for the faint light in the library. Clara sat there, her hands clasped, her phone buzzing nonstop. She looked up when he entered, her face pale. "Adrian," she began softly, "I saw the news. I swear I had nothing to—" "Do not," he said sharply. "Do not lie to me." Her mouth fell open. "You think I leaked it?" "You are the only one who had access to that file," he said, his voice cold and deliberate. "The only one with a reason to turn this into a headline." "My reason?" Her voice trembled. "You think I wanted this? I am being torn apart out there. People are calling me names I cannot even repeat." He stepped closer, anger and disbelief darkening his eyes. "Do not play the victim, Clara. You got your attention. Congratulations. You wanted the world to know who Mrs. Holt really is? Now they do." Her breath caught in her throat. For a moment, she searched his face, looking for even a trace of the man who had played piano in the rainlight. But there was nothing left, only the ruthless CEO again. "I never thought you would be this cruel," she said quietly. "Cruel is a word poor people use when rich people stop pretending," he replied. The slap of her palm against his cheek cracked through the silence. He did not flinch, did not move, only stared at her as if the gesture had proven everything he believed. She stepped back, tears rising but refusing to fall. "You know what the saddest part is? I actually started to believe you were more than this. I thought you could feel again." Adrian turned away. "We are done here. The contract is terminated." Her voice broke. "You mean my payment?" "I mean everything," he said flatly. "Take your money and get out." She stared at him for a long moment, then reached for the velvet ring he had given her. With steady hands, she pulled it off and placed it on the table between them. "I am not taking your money," she said, "and I am not staying in your cage." When she turned to leave, she paused at the doorway and looked back one last time. "You built your empire on control, Adrian, but you will never own peace. Not until you stop treating love like a transaction." Quote. Then she was gone. Adrian stood alone in the vast library. The clock ticked loudly against the silence. On the table, next to the ring, lay a folded piece of paper. He hesitated before unfolding it. It was one of Clara's sketches, a simple piano, drawn in pencil. Beneath it, she had written, "Even stone can echo music if you listen long enough." The message hit him harder than any headline. He sank into the chair, holding the sketch in his hands, but the house felt colder than ever. Somewhere outside, thunder rolled again. But this time, there was no rain to hide behind. 3 months passed. Winter slipped quietly into spring, but for Adrian Holt, the world had not thawed. The headlines had faded, yet the echo of the scandal lingered like a bruise. He worked, he spoke in meetings, he smiled when cameras demanded it, but at night, silence followed him through the halls of the mansion that now felt too large, too empty. He kept the sketch Clara left behind on his desk. Some nights, he caught himself tracing the outline of the piano with his thumb, wondering why the sound of her voice haunted him more than the sound of his own success. He had built everything on control, yet somehow, he had lost the only thing that ever felt real. One morning, Evelyn, the image consultant, entered his office with hesitation. "There is an invitation you should see," she said, placing an envelope in front of him. "It is from the Bellevue Art Foundation. They are hosting a charity exhibition this weekend. The theme is Echoes of Stone." Adrian froze. The words pulled something deep in his chest. "Who is the artist?" Evelyn hesitated. "Clara Reyes." He said nothing for a long time. Then quietly, "Prepare a donation under my name. Anonymous." Saturday came. The gallery buzzed with laughter and the soft murmur of art lovers. Walls were lined with paintings and sketches that breathed with emotion. In the center of the room hung a large framed piece, the same piano sketch Clara had left behind, expanded into a full canvas, its details rich with grief and light. Beneath the painting, a plaque read, "To those who learn to listen again." Clara stood near the display, dressed simply in ivory, her hair pinned loosely. She looked nothing like the woman from the tabloids. When she spoke to visitors, her voice carried calm, not bitterness. From across the room, Adrian watched. For the first time in years, he did not feel the need to control the moment. He just wanted to be near it. He approached slowly. The crowd seemed to melt away as she noticed him. For a heartbeat, neither spoke. Then Clara said, "You should not be here." "Probably not," Adrian replied softly. "But I needed to see what you created." "It is not about you," she said. "I know," he answered. "That is what makes it beautiful." Her eyes softened, though she tried to hide it. "You look different. Close." "I feel different," he said. "When you left, I thought I had lost control. Now I realize I lost myself long before you ever walked into my life." Clara folded her arms, her voice steady. "You hurt me, Adrian. You humiliated me in front of the world." "I know," he said quietly. "And I cannot erase that. But I want to make it right." He reached into his coat and handed her an envelope. "It is for the foundation," he said. "Enough to fund art scholarships for 100 students. No press. No name attached." Clara looked down at it, then back at him. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you taught me something I did not understand," he said. "Love cannot be bought, but redemption must be earned." Her expression faltered, the wall around her heart cracking. "You really think money redeems you?" "No," he said. "I think listening does." Silence stretched between them. Around them, people admired her work, unaware of the storm that had once tied these two together. Finally, Clara took a slow breath. "I do not know if forgiveness is something you can earn, Adrian." "Then let me try anyway," he said. He turned to leave, but she stopped him. "You could have sent the donation. Why come yourself?" He met her eyes, the truth raw and simple. "Because the only art I cannot walk away from is you." For a moment she said nothing. Then, softly, "Do not say things you do not mean." "I mean every word," he said. "You once told me even stone can echo music. I am just trying to hear it again." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Around them, the lights dimmed slightly as the evening exhibit began. The crowd drifted toward the main hall, leaving the two of them standing beneath her painting two people who had broken each other, now learning how to begin again. 2 weeks after the exhibition, the spring sky over New York glowed with pale gold. The city had begun to bloom again, and for the first time in a long while, so had Adrian Holt. He walked along the quiet streets near the Bellevue Art Foundation, a bouquet of white lilies in his hand. They were Clara's favorite. He had remembered from a brief conversation months ago, a small detail she never thought he noticed. Inside the gallery, the air smelled faintly of paint and fresh paper. Most of the artwork had been moved except for the piano painting that had started it all. Clara stood in front of it, adjusting the plaque for a new event. She turned when she heard his footsteps, surprise flickering across her face. "You are early," she said. "I was afraid you would not stay if I was late," Adrian replied. She smiled faintly, though her eyes still held caution. "You never used to be afraid of anything." "Maybe that was the problem," he said, offering her the flowers. "I thought fear was weakness, but the truth is, it is what makes us human." She took the bouquet gently. "Why are you here, Adrian? To buy another painting?" No, he said. I came to return something. From his pocket, he pulled out a small velvet box, the same one that had once held the cold, contractual ring. But inside now was something different. A simple gold band, unpolished, engraved with a single word. Listen. Clara's breath caught. You kept the box? I kept everything, he said. The papers, the contract, even your first letter to the hospital. I read it again last night. You wrote, kindness does not need witnesses. I think I finally understand what you meant. Her voice was quiet. Understanding does not erase what happened. No, he said, but it can be the start of something honest. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by the echoes of her art. Through the tall windows, sunlight filtered in, painting gold over their faces. He took a step closer. Clara, I do not want another contract. No terms, no timelines. I only want a chance to try without the lies, without the fear. Her eyes shimmered, but her voice remained steady. You broke me, Adrian, and I had to learn how to rebuild without you. I know, he said softly, and that is why I am standing here now, not to ask for the woman I lost, but to meet the one she became. For a long moment, neither moved. Then Clara set the flowers down and reached into her pocket. She took out a folded piece of paper, one of her sketches. It was a small drawing of a hand resting on piano keys. This was supposed to be my final piece, she said. But maybe it does not have to be. He unfolded it carefully, his hands trembling. Do you forgive me? He asked. She hesitated. Forgiveness is not a single word, Adrian. It is a choice we have to make again every day. Then let me keep choosing it, he said. For as long as you let me. For the first time, she smiled fully warm, unguarded, real. You always know how to turn confessions into proposals. Only when they are true, he said. She looked at the ring one last time, then extended her hand. If I say yes, it will not be the same story. I am counting on that, he whispered. He slipped the ring onto her finger, the sunlight catching on the gold. There were no cameras, no witnesses, just two people learning that love could survive its own mistakes. Outside, the wind carried the faint sound of a piano from the street performer across the square. Clara leaned against him, her head resting on his shoulder. Adrian said quietly, I used to think love was control. And now? She asked. Now I think it is surrender. She smiled, eyes closed. Then you are finally listening. He kissed her forehead, and for the first time, it did not feel like an ending. It felt like a beginning. And as you listen to this ending, ask yourself, do you believe love can grow from a lie if both hearts finally choose the truth?